Presenters, thank you for joining us all. Our presenters today, we have Chaitanya Prabhu, an incredible spiritual scholar and a very humble personality. And then we have Radha Dasi. She's another incredible soul who is very compassionate and kind towards all living beings. Our two presenters for today. Ramananda Prabhu, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for joining us. So if you all don't mind to place your hands together, we offer our humble offerings of gratitude to the divine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Thank you. If you don't mind.
Beta Sar Prabhu, you forgot to introduce yourself. The most compassionate, fearless leader here.
Thank you. Thank you, Radha Devi. So this is the verse we'll be discussing from today. Is chapter 10, verse number 41. Yad yad vibhutimat sattvam Srimad urjitam eva va tad tad eva vagachatvam mama tejom sasambhavam. Translation.
Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor.
Thank you.
Chaitanya Prabhu.
So here, thank you everyone for joining today. And this is actually a continuation of the theme from the previous chapter. This is the 9th. We just discussed the chapter 9 and then we go to chapter 10 in the Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 10, we focused on the glory of Bhakti Yoga. How it is so simple, how it is so universal, how it is so accessible to everyone. So now the way we discussed was in the process of bhakti, there are we as souls, then there is the process of bhakti, which is like a linking process. And then there is the divine. The divine in the Bhagavad Gita is known by the name Krishna. So in this chapter, the focus shifts from the process of bhakti. This was in one sense the process. This was the focus of 9th chapter. Now in the 10th chapter as well as the 11th chapter, which we'll discuss next week, the focus will be on not the process of devotion, but the object of devotion. So this is the process and this is now the object of devotion. And this verse is giving us a very interesting perception of the divine. See, sometimes there is the idea that this is the world around us, and above this, there is the world where God resides. And so now this understanding is true. There is spiritual level, there is material level. And God resides, the divine resides in this level. And associate with this idea that the divine is up there is that there are people of various categories of power. Some people are weak, extremely, some people are stronger than others. And it's like a hierarchy. And wherever this hierarchy goes all the way to the top, and the being who resides at the top is God. That God is that the person who is at the top of all beings. So if you consider a game like tennis, the divine, the idea is that if you apply that, in tennis, there are maybe 1,000, 10,000 professional players. Somebody might be ranked at the bottom, and there's one player who's ranked at the top. Now, so this is the hierarchical conception of divinity. What is the hierarchy? There is a hierarchy of beings, and the divine exists at the top of the hierarchy. Now, the challenge, well, this is a common understanding, and there is truth to it, but it is not the complete truth. This is an incomplete conception. Why? Because the divine, if we think that the divine just exists at the top, then we may think that, okay, one day, or some people may think that, one day, if I get enough power, then I can go up this hierarchy. I can go up this hierarchy, and then I can overthrow God. I can become God. It's like if somebody is #1 tennis player today, but the idea is that if I play well, if I keep winning matches, then one day I can become the #1 and I can usurp the #1 player. So this is the hierarchical conception. Now, this idea that is implied by the hierarchical conception that we can rise upward, gain more power, and one day we can usurp God, that itself is where this notion becomes incorrect. So yes, there is definitely a hierarchy of beings in the world, but we could put it, if this is the material level, there are beings of various levels, and there is a hierarchy here. But the divine exists at another level of being. So this entire is the material level, and this is the spiritual level. So the divine exists at this level. Divine exists in another category. That there is an unbridgeable gap between the human and the divine. No matter how powerful human beings become, they cannot become God. But more important than that, actually, the divine doesn't just exist there on the top, unreachable top. Actually, the divine exists throughout existence. So, the divine exists everywhere. And in fact, anyone who has any power, their power is provided by the divine. So somebody might be very intelligent, somebody might be less intelligent, somebody might be utterly unintelligent. But everybody's intelligence, everybody's power comes from the divine. So these are two philosophical terms, which we need not go into too much, but here the idea is that divine is transcendent. Transcendent means he exists above all beings, beyond all beings, at another level of reality. And this idea that the divine exists in this world, sustaining all beings, this is the idea of immanence. So transcendence is the divine beyond matter. Immanence is the divine in matter. The divine is the sustainer. So here, correspondingly, this is like the divine is simply the overseer. But here, the divine is also the sustainer. Everybody that exists gets their power from the divine. Now, that is what this particular verse of the Gita is saying, that everything attractive that we see in the world, that has a spark of the power of the divine. So we see somebody very powerful. Yes, that person is a powerful person, but their power is coming from the divine. Somebody is very good looking. Yeah, they are good looking, but their good looks, they didn't manufacture those good looks when they were in their mother's womb. Those good looks are coming from the divine. And if this person has so much power, and that power comes from the divine. So I'll elaborate on this later, but Vedaji, Radha, they want to speak anything?
I would hand it over to Radha.
I'm just like blown away by this depiction. It should go on a postcard. You know, if you scroll up to your first one, here, so if I understand this correctly, what you're saying is like what we're seeing here, which is a popular conception of God. I think that was my conception of God until I was like 20, maybe. It's not incorrect. It's just oversimplified, in that it almost, because God's at the top and we see him, we're in relationship with him and seeing him as the most powerful, we inherently are trying to climb our way up there. And so it almost endorses that like hierarchical conception, right? I think this is something that I love so much about Bhakti when I came in, is it's like the path and the goal is the same, right? Is that we're like trying to be the servant of the servant of the servant, and ultimately that's our goal. And when you elaborate, when you scroll down and you depicted it here with the complete conception here, it said, you know, God is at the top, but he's also at all these other little granular, all these other steps as well. And ultimately you created that space between material and spiritual. So it's like, we'll never get there. We can completely forget that. We don't even need to think that we'll ever get there. But what we can do is try to imbibe the qualities that he gives us and use them in his service, like give them back to him. And in that way, we develop relationship with him, which is ultimately the most fulfilling thing to us, right? Is that kind of, is that what you're saying?
Yes. This actually helps us to see that the divine is not just like a boss existing up there. The divine is right here with us, and we can personally connect with the divine. So that immanence makes God very reachable, not very unreachable or remote.
Yeah, it's almost like I was a manager. And when I was before I was a manager, I was just like friends with everybody, and it was great. It was really nice. When I became a manager, it almost like created that distance, that space between me and what I thought, like what were my friends at one time. And it was actually like quite sad, like something was kind of lost in that change, because I couldn't relate to them in the same way that I did before when I was one of them. I couldn't listen to their problems and try to solve them in the same way that I would have, because now I'm the boss. And so now I'm having like multiple conflicts of interest. And because I'm not God, I can't like fulfill everybody's desire. So therefore everybody doesn't see me so close knit as their friend. And that is like difficult, but it's like so nice to know that like with God, he can do that. He can be our friend. He can fulfill our desires. He can fulfill everybody's desires, because he's God, right? And it's like, so that being able to be friends with him, it creates a whole nother like layer almost of depth and intimacy in that relationship.
Yes.
I was thinking as you were speaking how when I was young, the first impression of God that I was provided with was, you know, God has created you and God creates everything, and this God from a managerial CEO perspective. And I kind of was fearful of this personality. Who is this person? Where does he live? How do I see him? Do we ever interact? Does he even exist? You know, so, and it seems like there's possibility that he exists, but who is this creator? Who is the maintainer? And so this notion of God being the big boss somewhere up there, it creates a deterrence for creating an intimate relationship with God. For me, I struggled with that for a very long time, trying to see, I don't think, God and me, I don't think we can ever get along because, he's up there somewhere. I don't know what he looks like, but, I've been told all these things. And so I think, maybe I should just leave it at that. It's just, we're just not meant to be. And so that kind of caused a little distance in my pursuit of spiritual life, where I was trying to be closer to God, closer to the divine. But when this verse was introduced to me, this text from the Bhagavad Gita, and how everything in this world is a spark of his splendor, then I was like, oh, okay. So there's God in these sparks. Then I was starting to see, okay, I can make sense. This plant, these trees, these animals, they all have God in them. And furthermore, what I was able to make more sense of is, I think Chaitanya Prabhu will get into it, is the qualitative similarity and the quantitative difference between us and God. And that even brought me closer to having a more personal relationship. Okay, I accept he's bigger than me, and he's my source, and I just want to be closer to the source. So understanding God from a more personal level is what made me stay in my practice of spiritual life, rather than just be discouraged by the distance that sometimes we can put between us and God, or the texts, the wisdom texts sometimes, or other spiritual practices. So that's something that I was thinking as you were sharing this.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because it's like, when we think about it, if we're going to show up to a friend, we're going to show up with like one of our masks off, right? We're going to bring like a larger degree of vulnerability to that relationship. We're going to come and talk about what we're going through, our weaknesses, and they're going to like really be there for us and support us. And if we have a good friend, sometimes we don't have the greatest friends, but if we have a good friend or a good partner, that's what they'll provide. And if they didn't, if it was just then we probably wouldn't be so inclined to even continue to have that relationship, really. So the fact that we can have that, we don't have to worry about, so we don't have to get so consumed and caught up in the rules or what this is supposed to look like. I mean, there's a place for that, but really the most important thing to know is we're just showing up and giving him our heart. That's reassuring to me anyway.
Thank you. Beautiful points. Let's look at them. So where you mentioned, I just depicted this here. Now we could say that God is completely different from us. The divine has no similarity. And this creates a distance. And then that feel, okay, this so all-powerful being, I have to cower in fear. And that's all that there is to the relationship. If it's totally different, then there's no really good relationship. And it's totally identical. Okay, I can be God. Then there is no, again, there's no relationship possible. Because a relationship requires two people who are relating with each other. If the two are one, literally, and love, when two people are in love, they may say, we two are one. That means our hearts are united. Not that the two people have somehow lost their individuality and become one person entirely. So both of these ideas they create obstacles in developing a personal relationship with the Lord. And the idea is we are similar in quality in the sense that we all have a heart. Human beings have a heart. The divine being has a heart. Of course, we can say there is the heart is purer. Our heart may not be pure, but that's not the relevant part. We all have a heart. We all have emotions. We all long to love and be loved. In terms of having a heart and having longings, there's remarkable similarity. But difference in quantity is that we are finite beings and the divine is an infinite being. So that difference is there. But that difference does not mean that there is an unbridgeable gap, because there is similarity in qualities. And that's why when you talked about vulnerability, Radha Devi, so the point is that the divine also shows vulnerability. In the Krishna as God is all powerful. Yet, what he also does is, he sometimes, we discuss the concept of Leela, he sometimes becomes like a child. And when a small child with a thunderbolt suddenly occurs in the sky, lightning occurs, he suddenly runs and catches the legs of his mother as if he's afraid and needing shelter. Now, why does he have to do that? He's God. He's not afraid of thunderbolts. He can cast thunderbolts according to some understandings of the divine. Yet, here, for the richness of the relationship, he acts as a child and he has a devotee who is acting like his mother. And relationships can bring so much joy. So why should God be deprived of the richness of multiple relationships? No, why should God be only restricted to the role that is the supreme being, that is the king, and we are all meant to be servile subjects? God can enjoy the full range of relationships that we can enjoy in this, and he can enjoy them far more. And we, in our relationship with God, can also enjoy a rich range of relationships. The normal hierarchy is God is considered the father or the parent figure, whatever it is, and we are all the children. That is
Your
the
audio
normal.
your audio is a little bit funny right now, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu.
What is it?
It's like a little crinkly, your audio.
Is it better now?
It's still a little bit crinkly.
Just now it became that way, or it was always like that way?
Just now, did it become that way for you, Vedas? Do you hear him as like that?
Yeah. You have a little bit of like an alien voice sometimes, some of the words.
Oh, okay. I try to speak slowly. This is a normal divine hierarchy, human hierarchy. A divine is the person who is powerful, is like the parent figure, and we humans are children. But in the Bhakti tradition, within the concept of Leela, the divine takes the role of a child. And the devotee can take the role of a parent. And the normal hierarchy is almost inverted. That is simply for the reciprocation of love. And this vision enables us to see that the vision and this conception of the divine is so inclusive. The divine is not just a supremely powerful being. Yes, the divine is, but the divine includes all relationships.
Your voice is really choppy now.
Okay, maybe that's that I should stop speaking. You start speaking.
It's kind of like, if you think about it, like no matter how much you like your boss, if you think that they're a really great person, you're probably really just going to reach out from a social perspective, like at Christmas time, maybe send them a Christmas card, or like you're probably not going to get too chummy with them just out of respect for that relationship, and so that it ensures that it can function properly. But like if your child reached out, you're going to be all the time engaging in that relationship with them. And just the fact that you're doing that, you're building such a strong bond with them. So it's the way that you set this up, Chaitanya Prabhu, in your explanation in this full conception, it's so complete to me, because it's like it's built in that we can have that intimacy with him, but it's also built in that it's void of competition. And because of our conditioned state, it's like sometimes hard not to want to compete with God and try to be God. That's a rabbit hole I find myself in all the time. But if you really realize the conception, there's no space for that. That's not the goal. He's on a whole different plane, and our role is just in this relationship, and it's really so beautiful.
What I find interesting in this concept of relationship is how, say, we see the divine as the personification of love. Love is what sustains anything, and is the only thing that actually truly fulfills each and every one of us. And so when love is the basis, so when love, which is Krishna, wherever you put him, as a father, as a wife, as a husband, as a mother, whatever position you put him in, whatever relationship you put him in, it becomes complete, because that completeness is only complete when we have that divine love. So without that divine love, it almost seems all relationships are incomplete. And so foundation of that relationship is that love. And that love can take all forms. As a mother, as a child, as a father, all these relationships are possible in its completeness because of having the divine personification in all aspects of our lives. I'm not sure if I made sense on that one.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I have kind of a devil's advocate question for Chaitanya Prabhu, if I could ask it.
Yes, please.
As we're talking about all these different roles we can see God as, where's the line between like developing the bond and, sometimes you hear people say like, oh, you're just being overly sentimental. It's an over sentimental path. Where's the line between like developing a real relationship and something imaginary?
Yeah, excellent point. In fact, I was going to talk about that. In the path of bhakti, there are two aspects, and both of them need to be balanced. There is God's greatness, and then there is the divine's sweetness. Now, the understanding of the greatness brings a sense of subordination, a sense of submission, a sense of humility. The understanding of the sweetness brings a sense of affection. And both of these, in a healthy balance, that's what brings steady devotion. So if there is no awareness, if one of these becomes too much, if there's only the awareness of the sweetness and not the awareness of the greatness, then that is definitely imbalanced. That is not very steady for a long time. And the
But
same
can
applies
the sweetness be the greatness? And can the sweetness be the greatness, and the greatness can be the sweetness?
You always like to blur boundaries, Yes, definitely. In one sense, the sweetness is, you could say, the greatest greatness.
Yes.
Like if we meet some VIP, somebody, the powerful, say, a powerful CEO of a company, of a Fortune 500 company, or somebody is the president of a particular country. And now that they are in power, is itself impressive. They have that much power and influence is impressive. But if they're very approachable, they're very down to earth, then that makes it even more, it almost becomes endearing. The
Sounded
power.
bad again, Prabhu. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but your sound.
Okay, let me just change my sound completely.
Yes.
You can.
Sweetness is the greatness, and greatness is the sweetness. So if someone is great and they have a human component to them, it makes it even more sweet. So you're right saying that bhakti is the balanced combination of both.
Yeah, I like this point though, that we don't want to completely throw out the reverence that we should have for God. Especially, he's depicted that so beautifully in that first diagram or visual that he presented, and that God is both, because we still want to have that level of respect, and it makes me think like that's where, when we bring in all of the rules and the ways, the standards of which we should interact with God, that's, I guess, the purpose of those, right? To like keep us in those bounds. And sometimes in my experience, like what happens in spiritual paths or religion is like people become so focused on the rules that they become like, okay, I can't do this, this is too high, or they're not really developing that relationship. So like, then that relationship is what's, I feel like, sustaining to continue to practice, because if there's no relationship, then it just becomes kind of dogmatic, right? So it's like almost, it's also finding that balance between like the rules and respect for them, and at the same time, like a broader understanding that the relationship is the goal, though the rules support. Could you elaborate on the relationship between those maybe a little bit more?
Yes. Okay, Chaitanya Prabhu, you go ahead.
No, you speak. Is my audio better now?
Yes.
Seems to be.
Okay, please go ahead. Aveda, you speak.
No, you go ahead. I'll chime in after. You've been speaking for a while.
Yeah. No. So rules, and the whole point of rules is that there has to be a purpose for the rules. Sometimes rules get a lot of bad press, but rules are in one sense necessary for functionality and even for fun. I'll explain how. That functionality means if you're driving on the road, and if nobody follows rules, traffic would be not only chaotic but deadly. So people have to follow rules. So rules are necessary for functionality, and rules, say, if we consider traffic. But similarly, if we consider somebody's playing a game, say if somebody is playing chess, somebody's playing any game, baseball, basketball, and if there are no rules, then you really can't have much fun. Anybody say in basketball, in baseball, the pitcher is going to pitch, and instead of pitching properly, the pitcher just runs up to the batter and just smacks the batter down. Or the batter takes the bat and instead of hitting the ball, goes and hits the ball or hits the pitcher itself. Well, there will be no fun in the game. It is when even the rules are there. Within the framework of the rules, then different players can exhibit their skill, they can exhibit their expertise, they can exhibit their creativity. So it is that the rules themselves are not bad. But when some rules are given and there is no purpose given for those rules, then that's when, why can't I do that? So when we understand clearly that there is, that the purpose is a relationship. Now, in every relationship, we may not necessarily use the word rules, but there are parameters. Okay, if we are in this relation, these are things we can do, these are things which we don't want to do, which we want to avoid. So the point is that purposeless rules, or the rules may have a purpose, but if we don't know the purpose of the rules, then also the rules seem purposeless to us. And that is when they start becoming as you said, dogmatic. They start seeming irrational. They start becoming seeming pointless, regressive, repressive, and then all the problem comes up. And this goes back to the earlier idea that if I am just a tiny being here and the divine is way up here, and there is only the understanding of greatness, that I am not meant to ask any questions, I'm just meant to obey. There's a gag of just this kind of servility in the name of religion. Let's pay, pray, obey. That's all. That's all. Don't have to do any, you are not allowed to ask any questions. You're not allowed to raise any doubts. Just do these things, and that's all that there is to it. But if we consider the Gita's approach to the relationship with the divine and the Bhakti tradition's approach, you can say is that there is, we analyze, we try to understand the nature of reality, we ask questions. And when we ask questions, we realize, we try to practice a process by which we can gain the experience. And then after that, we relish. So this is the dynamic which is what makes for a fulfilling relationship.
Can we have analyze, realize, and rejoice?
That's nice. Rejoice. That's even better. Rejoice. So
I like
you're
that.
defeating me at my game.
I guess we can even see this like in our own relationships, like if you're in a marriage, and I know like my husband and I, we like split up household responsibilities. So like he does the laundry and I do the cooking and washing the dishes, and then we share cleaning. And if somebody came up and was like, okay, how's your marriage going? And it's like, okay, well, according to all of the agreements that we have, we're right on track. Like we are respecting our rules and our boundaries. But we're not really spending any time together or sharing our hearts or laughing or having fun. Our marriage is kind of stale, right? Or the opposite. If all we're doing is laughing and having fun, but there's no real respect for each other's boundaries or how to proceed together, it's like then it's a little bit out of control. So I guess from what you just said, I can see how both are crucial. And but at the end of the day, it's almost like those moments where you're sharing your heart and you're having fun, that's kind of like the glue that kind of holds the house together almost. Is that a good analogy?
Yes, definitely. Is my audio better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, the whole point is that each one of us needs to recognize the rules, but recognize the purpose of the rules also. If just the rules are followed, but there's nothing beyond that, then that's not very fulfilling. But if there is, we say in the name of, oh, we love each other, but there's no rules, then there's no framework for the relationship. Then also the love it will be difficult to sustain that if everything is unpredictable. Like you're giving your example. If there is no definition or demarcation of roles, if there is no definition, understanding of who is expected to do, how will things function? So yes, there are rules which help us direct our affection towards the Lord, but at the same time, there is also the understanding that we are not just meant to follow rules. We are meant to develop a relationship.
I want to put some spanner in the works right now. And that is that, sometimes when things are overly predictable, then it becomes very boring. And I agree that the purpose is to have this loving relationship. And that's why I feel it's so important to emphasize that the purpose of all these rules is to actually have that loving relationship with the divine. Because otherwise rules get very, very boring. If I had a rule that I do this many dishes, I cook this time, this is like everything planned, I would get so bored. I like everything, somewhat more spontaneous, like today is a beautiful day. We're going to go for a walk and we're not going to cook lunch. We're going to go and eat from the gardens, or something like that. Because I think that because the purpose is to have that divine relationship. So the rules can sometimes, I won't say compromise, but can have less emphasis, because overemphasis on the rules sometimes becomes a little bit more dry. So that's my understanding of this principle, that there is a need for a deep balance in this whole process. And that's what Bhakti does. Chaitanya
I love that. I love that point. It's almost like because he's God, the rules, he knows your heart. So if you're, it's like, yeah, the rules are there, but because he's God, he knows your heart. So unlike with my husband, there's not going to be a misunderstanding if things, he gets it. So it's like really the most important. Always goes back down to that heart being the most important, Veda Prabhu.
So, okay. Am I
a little audio challenge there. Go ahead, Prabhu. We're not able to hear you.
okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about this. So let's look at one more point in this direction, that this vision that God is eminently accessible. And you mentioned this, that there's a difference between, now when we're talking about relationships, there's a human divine relationship, and there is a human relationship. Of course, you could say a human non-human relationship also could be there. We could have our pets and other things. But now just exploring the difference, the similarity and the difference between the two of them. In one sense, the dynamics of love, love is in one sense similar, or there is in every relationship, we care for the other person, we want to do something for the other person. The dynamics of love, they are similar. But at the same time, in terms of principle, that every relationship has some thing that we do for the other person and the other person does for us. But in the human divine relationship, there is the categorical difference in one sense between that Krishna, God, is all benevolent and is, you could say, omnibenevolent and omnipotent. So the divine can actually do the greatest good and wants to do the greatest good. So because of that, that creates a significant difference, and that difference again should not be undermined. It should not be recognized as it should not be undervalued. So generally, any relationship can, the idea of a relationship is that if I am here and you are here, and the two of us come together, the idea is both of us, a good relationship. Through that relationship, both of us become better. From where we are, we rise to a higher level. You improve me, I improve. Not necessarily through consciously criticizing others, but rather just in trying to love the other person, we become a better person. In trying to do something good for the other person, we become a better person. So children may want to make their parents proud of them, and children become worthwhile, even wonderful citizens as they grow up. And this, in one sense, can apply in any relationship. Now, in the human divine relationship, it is more that the divine, there is no improving Krishna. So this is the divine, and say we are here. So now, in one sense, Krishna is up there and we want to go up here. And it is, we seek to go up here, but it's almost like from, there is grace that comes and just lifts us up. That is the role of mercy. It'll come and just, it becomes like a parachute dropped from above by a plane, or a rescue object drop down and lifting us up. So this is the idea of mercy, lifting us up. But the wonderful thing is that Krishna, although he is up there and he's going to lift us up from up there, he doesn't act as if he's up there, because he's also all the way here with us. As I said, as the divine, he is here. So in one sense, Krishna is our destination, but also he is our companion. It's not that at the end of our journey, when we get to the spiritual level, then we will attain Krishna. No. Right now, he's there with us. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Krishna says that in everyone's heart, I am present as the indwelling super soul, as the aspect of divinity which is there within each one of us. And thus, this, in the dynamic of the relationship, while God wants us to come to a richer, sweeter, deeper level of love for him, a deeper sense of relationship with him, but simultaneously, he is here with us right now, helping us move ahead. And this vision creates such a sense of, we could say, comfort, and even of a sense of security, that divine is up there, that divine is in here. Is the destination and the companion, both. Okay.
That's beautiful. I like that. I like thinking that God's my friend, but it's nice that that I'm also subordinate. Like, to be honest, I kind of like being in that role when it's with someone like God that you can completely and fully trust. It's almost like a sigh of relief, like, oh, okay, I don't have to control everything. I don't have to be this or that. God's got me. I just need to. So I feel like in a way, like those rules, they help kind of in support and nourish that relationship of reverence, which is important, right? In our to feel that so that we can really depend on God in like a real holistic way.
Yes, definitely. Vedaji, you want to add anything before we finish?
Yeah, this destination and companionship, I feel they're simultaneously one and different at the same time, and it's so beautiful because the destination is not very far, because God is your companion and is your permanent companion, as it is explained in the yoga texts that we study. He's your eternal permanent companion, so much so that even when you do misdeeds in your life, he's still there with you. So it's pretty deep to realize that he's your companion, and that companion is not very far from you. So the destination is also not very far. So in that way, I feel very close to the divine when I think that he's my destination and he's my companion and is not very far. And he's situated in my heart. So this is something that I actually try to meditate upon, that we don't have to do this elaborate plans to find God only in big, huge infrastructures and big, huge monuments and temples. He's there always. So this is something that I meditate on.
It's beautiful. Yes, that echoes the theme from our previous session, where Krishna says that he satisfied simple fruit, flower, because he is very accessible for us. He's way up there, but he's also way in here with us on the way. So let's quickly recap. Started by talking about two conceptions of the divine. So of divinity. One is the hierarchical, and that is one is the transcendent conception, where God exists at the top. And then let's put it simple. Let's avoid that word here. There's the hierarchical conception, where God is at the top, and then there is the the conception of God as a sustainer. Is the more inclusive conception. He's there sustaining everyone, and whatever is good in them, that is coming from God. And then that we can related that with the idea of, in the relationship with God, there is we can either see all similar or all different, but we look at similarity and difference. There is oneness in quality, similar hearts, similar longings, right? With a difference in quantity. Let's say, and then when we are relating with God, the two aspects of the greatness and the sweetness, and both combined together, the feeling of subordination, the feeling of affection. This is what makes for steady devotion, a steady, real relationship. We talk about the role of rules. Rules, if the purpose is there, clear, then the rules can actually enrich. For example, if the purpose is enriching a relationship, and within that relationship, the rules can play a valuable role. But if it's bereft of the relationship, the rules can seem dogmatic. And the last point we discussed was about how, when we are trying to relate with God, we understand Him to be both the destination and the companion. So thank you very much. Anything to conclude? Or shall we stop here?
Is there a way, this word subordination on this third takeaway? Is there a, sometimes that word seems a little bit of a, like you're trying to tell me that I'm going to have to subordinate myself to someone. It's a little bit hard on the ego. So how can we make that landing a little softer, if possible?
Yeah, we could say harmonization.
Yes.
Or like He takes care of us, like He provides us shelter. In that way, He's higher, right?
When it's see, if I am like, I'm going back to the example of a road. The road transport system is far bigger than me. I'm going to be part of the road transport system, then I have to harmonize with the rules. So if we are playing in orchestra,
I can buy the harmonized one. Just subordination seems a little, like, I guess maybe because I'm a material being, and it's hard to just subordinate myself to someone, like if you're that great, just go a little easy on me,
Yeah, true. The soft landing. Yeah, actually, it's also that this subordination is out of affect. It's, as you said, subordination also out of affection, out of genuine appreciation. Say if somebody's learning, like you are a jiu-jitsu expert. Now, when you learn jiu-jitsu, in one sense, you subordinated yourself to your teacher. Now, but that was not out of fear, that was not out of terror. That was, you actually saw that there's something good in this teacher. And that subordination is for the purpose of harmonization. Okay, that teacher wants me to train in this way. If I train in this way, then I can also learn the skill. So many times, if we look at maybe sports movies where a coach trains a mentor, mentors trains a player, sometimes the coaches can be very hard, but sometimes those students, when they become those players, when they become maybe legends, then the coach also becomes a legend by that. The point is that hardness again, I think hardness itself is not the problem, or rather, the idea of subordination is not a problem. It's only when the subordination is, we are forced to be subordinate to somebody who is incompetent. Or if you're
Subordination sounds like an imposition, like this big guy imposing himself on me, So yeah, nicely explained, Chaitanya Prabhu.
Yeah.
Esther just said something in the chat. She said acceptance of his greatness, which made me think like we almost need to focus first on this like sweet and affection component. And then once we develop that love and trust, then it's not so hard to view ourselves as to give him that authority, because we really firmly believe in that love and trust he has for us.
Esther is getting deep here.
She is.
Okay, so can we zoom back out again? Or zoom back into everyone so we can see everyone's glowing effulgence? Thank you all so much. I'm so
Thank
happy.
you. I have to leave now. I have
Put everyone
from New York. Thank you so much.
Okay, Narayani Devi has a takeaway for us today.
So as I'm listening, thank you so much. This class was beautiful, and it really helped me to understand the dynamic of my relationship with Krishna better. And I was really relating it to, this was my first year of teaching third grade, and I'm having to lay down the rules with the children, and it can be very dogmatic at times. And that causes a lot of friction between me and the children. So I had to figure out, okay, this dogmatic, these are the rules, you need to follow them, is just not working. I had to be able to see Krishna in all of their little hearts and relate in that way where I'm putting my heart into it. Okay, we have this rule, but let me explain to you why we have this rule. We have this rule because, like, let's say, for example, writing rules, okay, that we need to follow to be able to write correctly. This is going to help you to eventually write a paragraph, write a sentence, a paragraph, an essay, in chapters, and one day maybe a book, and you all can become authors. Well, then that's totally different from, okay, these are the rules of writing and you need to follow them, and you're not following the rules. So once the purpose and the heart and the relationship was established more, I noticed, okay, everybody's learning so much better and we're all getting along so much better now. That dynamic in a classroom is not helpful. It has to, children need to be able to learn in a way where you're connecting with their hearts. So that's what I learned, and I was relating it that way. Thank you very much for the class.
Thank you, Narayani. Thank you all very much. We're so glad that you're with us. We'll be back on next weekend. Please share with your friends. Pencil the time and the date on your calendars so we can be the recipient of your presence and your energetic love in this Sangha. Thank you all very much. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.